I finally just finished watching season 4 of Vikings, and oh my god, has this show gotten fantastic, man, because I made a video on season 1 talking about how much I liked it. Seasons 2 and 3, I just watched, and I put off making a video for so long that I just feel like I couldn't articulate my thoughts perfectly well, but regardless, I still loved both season 2 and 3. The show is going very strong, and today I wanted to sit down and talk about season 4, what I liked, what I didn't like. We're going to be talking about all of it today. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another video. If you are new here, my name is Kyle. I'm your guy with many YouTube channels. So I have a little bit of a problem when I talk about Vikings because for some reason, and it's a good thing, don't get me wrong, the series ended up going to 1 hour episodes, 20 episodes per season. There's a lot to break down, and I can't dive deep into every single little plot point because it's a lot to remember off the top of my head. I have like some brief points of like the order of how some things happen, but there are going to be things that I'm skipping over. I'm going to be talking about like the really solid things that happened with the season, stuff I liked, stuff I didn't like. But regardless, we ended off season 3 with Floki killing Athelstan, and that was a long time coming, to be honest with you. I thought that was going to be a possibility, and we're going to talk about a death later that I did not see coming, but regardless. So the season starts off with Ragnar actually seeing visions of the gates of Valhalla, and I absolutely love the scenery and the imagery that they use in the show. It was beautiful. So I was actually thinking, like, okay, is Ragnar about to die? But then he didn't die, so I was like, okay, what's the purpose of that? I don't really know. But of course, they end up figuring out, the season actually ended with Ragnar going to Floki and said, I know you killed Athelstan. I know you did. Bjorn figures it out. Bjorn arrests him because Ragnar was not in a right mind to do so. I don't remember if he was passed out or if he was just sick or whatever was going on with him, right? But either way, Ragnar ends up waking up or getting better, but he figures out that Bjorn actually arrested Floki. Ragnar freaks out and it's kind of like, whose stupid idea was that? And he called Floki his friend. Why would you do that? I don't know how Bjorn kind of came to the decision, but he wanted to prove himself worthy, so he went out to go live in the wilderness. And I want to talk about Bjorn for a second because I love the character that he's become. I would argue he just might be my favorite character in the entire show now. In season 1, when I made a video talking about that, I just didn't like him, which is funny because he's really the only character that I went out of my way to say, I don't really like Bjorn. I don't know why. Maybe because he was defiant. I've watched a lot of Vikings since then. I don't really remember the particular details about why I didn't like him, but he turned into a absolutely amazing character. So he went out to the wilderness, wants to live on his own, might die, might not, nobody cares, or nobody knows, and Ragnar's kind of proud of him, just, okay, you go be a man. And really the only other thing to note is that we finally get to see Rollo and what's going on with him, and he's living perfectly fine. I kept thinking that something like absolutely horrible was going to happen to Rollo, and you know what, that still might be the case, but what the seer told him is actually coming about now, where he said something along the lines of, if you knew what the gods had planned for you, you'd be out on the beach dancing naked. He has a nice wife. He's having some problems getting to his wife to love him, but it all ends up working out in the end. But Rollo is living good. Either way, we're brought back to the Viking village. I don't remember what it's called. Is it Kattegat? I have trouble remembering stuff like that when it comes to shows. But regardless, we see Floki tied up to a pole. He's being punished. Ragnar he seems unsure because he called Floki his friend, but at the end of the day, like, you killed the man that he, I guess, loved. And I would argue that Ragnar loved Athelstan more than he loved Floki, but he ended up loving both of them, which is weird. But regardless, he ended up getting tortured. I don't know what that method of torture is called, but it's horrible. Floki looked like he was dying. He got put in a nice cold cave, strapped up by his arms, and he couldn't sleep because the water was just dripping on top of him. In that time, his daughter also died, and Helga's grieving. Helga goes back, doesn't tell Floki, and she's digging a burial for her daughter. Ragnar ends up finding her, but he's so ruthless, but he's so compassionate too, because he saw Helga, he felt bad for Helga, and he ends up freeing Floki at the end of the day because Helga was suffering herself just to get some water so Floki could sleep a little bit. Like, Helga is a goated character, by the way, loves Floki with all of her heart, which, weird man to love, but you gotta remember, everybody in this show is inherently bad. You just have to look at the ones that stand out and are a little bit better than all the bad guys. But is Bjorn actually really bad? I don't know. Bjorn might be the greatest good character in the entire show. No, Aethelwulf. Aethelwulf is. That guy just wanted to do what was right, and it just keeps having horrible things done to him, man. But then we're brought back to both Ragnar and King Egbert because both of them end up experiencing visions, and it wasn't really a vision because both of, like, it's so weird how they handle the whole religion thing because both of them believe two completely different things, but at the end of the day, Athelstan decides to visit both of them, and it's not just a vision. Athelstan comes to both of them and says, mercy. And this is what ends up leading, oh, and I said that in the wrong order, didn't I? This is what leads to Ragnar actually giving mercy or showing mercy to Floki. And it's escaping my mind who Egbert showed mercy to. I'm sure that it was somebody, but perhaps it was somebody insignificant. I'm going to sound really stupid. Guys, this is the problem, man, because it took so long to watch 20-hour-long episodes, and there's so much information there, and I apologize. I hope you're still enjoying the video, man. There's going to be pieces of this that I forget. We're also brought to Rollo in all of this, and Rollo is trying to learn the language, trying to get his wife to love him, but it's working ever so slightly. And the other thing is we are brought to is Bjorn actually taking on the bear like the Chad that he is. This dude's looking really, really solid, but Bjorn is also taking that scumbag, the big scumbag's wife. But the problem is the girl's in a better place with Bjorn, right? The girl's in a better place. She was with a horrible, horrible, violent man. But I get why the dude was pissed and ordered an assassination attempt on Bjorn, so people ended up following him. But Bjorn, the Chad that he is, ended up taking care of not only the bear, but the people following him. And the only other thing to note at this point in the story is that Rollo is now, and I don't know, like he got some sort of title where he is defending Paris against all the Vikings. They're preparing for that. They know that there's an attack coming. And other than that, Judith is still struggling with losing Athelstan. She is obsessed with him. She is showing Aethelwulf no affection whatsoever and ends up sleeping with his father. But now we're brought over to the storyline too, and this is around where this takes place with Ragnar and Yidu, the lady who ended up giving him medicine. Now, because Ragnar is in a very unhappy marriage and there are no morals where they live, they just kind of do what they want. Ragnar ends up, I don't know if he actually ended up loving this person or if he ended up just getting addicted to drugs. Like, obviously, this medicine that she kept giving him was some sort of drug. Ragnar ended up going through withdrawals and he's experiencing hallucinations. It's great. They're having great sex. Like, everybody is enjoying their time together. Ragnar ended up freeing the slave and she just ended up getting him addicted to the medicine. I don't know if it was ever shown exactly what it was. Like, it couldn't have been just something like pot, right? But regardless, it was some sort of drug, but Ragnar didn't know that he was taking a drug. He just said, I need this medicine. The medicine makes me feel good. The medicine makes me happy. And they experience like all of these great nights. And there was a lot of like twists and turns that this show takes, but I actually kind of saw that coming where it's like, okay, what's she giving him? It looks like drugs. He's experiencing effects like drugs. Is this going to hurt him in the end? And I don't know what her true intents were. Like, was she actually just looking to help Ragnar because Ragnar was sick, Ragnar was in pain? Is she actually, like, trying to help him? Was she appreciative of Ragnar for setting her free? Or was she just kind of, like, trying to maliciously, and I know she was a slave, like, was she trying to maliciously hurt her owner? But Ragnar hasn't really, as far as I know, mistreated her in any way. So I don't know, I was a little confused about that one, but I did see the withdrawal symptoms coming about. But then as Ragnar ends up getting closer to this girl, and I don't know his true feelings, but they ended up getting closer because he's on drugs. He ended up like feeling warmer to her. He kind of needed her and she ended up getting out of him because they had like these deep talks. She has a father that's an emperor, but Ragnar actually admitted out loud what happened to the settlement to somebody. And boy, did this lead to a few issues. Other than that, we have another storyline, to be honest with you, that wasn't that interesting or deep, where Lagertha ends up killing that other dude to remain Earl. So everything's all good with her in the meantime, but she's struggling to get pregnant. She's struggling to still find lover. She does end up getting pregnant. But other than that, Ragnar ends up visiting the seer again, and Floki also ended up visiting the seer, and I don't really know like what to take away from Floki's visit, but there's a big thing to take away from Ragnar's visit, where he asked how he will die, or when he will die, and the seer said, when the blind man sees you, that is the day you will die. So I spent the rest of the season looking for the blind man, looking for him in the background or something, because I didn't know at what point, but I also didn't think that Ragnar was going to die. That was like one of the biggest shocks of all time. I thought that he was going to get around it, but we are going to be talking about that, believe me. So Ragnar ends up announcing his attack on Paris. He wants to get revenge, but he secretly, it seems like the only motive that he has is to get revenge on Rollo. But regardless, they take off. There was a storm that sends their course off sail, but in the meantime, during that, our good friend Harvard comes back, right? Being as unfaithful as usual. But there's really nothing to note right now because there are more that happens within that. Ragnar's scumbag of a wife. Like, they're both scumbags, don't get me wrong, and neither of them deserve each one. Actually, they're both such bad partners that they actually do deserve each other. They're both dirtbags, they're both scumbags, they're both cheaters. It's absolutely horrible, but they end up actually reaching Paris after some time. Ragnar continues to take his medicine and ends up actually needing it to fight, but what they end up seeing is Rollo waiting with his brand new allies on the way to Paris. Rollo knows what's coming. Ragnar then decides to attack, and Rollo is kind of just calling the shots. Rollo isn't actually fighting. He's on top of this castle, just kind of safe, ordering everything around. They take on the Vikings way, no problem, because of course, like with the knowledge that Rollo has, it's obviously something great to have in battle. They suffer a really, really horrible, like, attack. They lose a lot of people, and everybody ends up having to retreat. They're stuck in the mud. Their ships are destroyed. Paris has all of the capabilities in the world now with Rollo running things, and I thought that was really, really tough to watch, because I actually thought, like, these guys have suffered so many horrible, like, battles that didn't work out for them. I was thinking, okay, they're going to get their revenge on Rollo now. And Rollo's been so flip-floppy back and forth. His death is on its way. I thought Ragnar was actually going to be able to attack Rollo, but everything goes south. Floki ends up drowning. Ragnar saves Floki, so we still know that Ragnar's true feelings to Floki. It isn't just what what he said, and it's not just because he's showing mercy, but no, he actually wants Floki alive, so he went out of his way to save him. But as they're retreating, you have the really, really heartfelt moment with Ragnar saying, like, he's really betrayed. He's hurt. This is his brother. And at the end of the day, Ragnar has always loved his brother. Well, not so much anymore, but Ragnar has always loved his brother. Rollo was the one who was jealous of his brother. Rollo was the one who was scheming behind his brother. It wasn't Ragnar. Ragnar defended him. When everybody wanted you dead, I was here fighting for you. And he's like brokenhearted. He sees what Rollo's become, and he's just completely betrayed by it. Ragnar, filled with rage, filled with He's going to get Rollo back, man. He's going to get Rollo back, and I thought that's what we were going to get. I thought we were going to finally have that giant conclusion. Now, it seems like they're just going to go head home, but we're not there yet, but we actually are taken home, which I don't really understand the point of this, and I don't know what they were trying to do with Floki. If anybody could only shed some light in the comments down below, if I'm supposed to know, because I haven't watched any part of Season 5 yet, but maybe there's an explanation there. I don't know why Floki ended up having a vision of Harbard and Ragnar's wife having sex together. Not a clue why Floki was the one that was shown that, but regardless, that was happening, and the one son, I can't remember which son saw, but one of the sons ended up seeing it, so Ragnar leaves. His wife is being unfaithful, just as she snagged Ragnar. Of course, right? Of course, this is what's going to take place. But then we're taken right back to Ragnar's crew, and the Vikings are retreating. Everybody is really, really disappointed in Ragnar, questioning his leadership. They are wondering what's going on with Ragnar, because Ragnar is not really in the best shape to fight. Ragnar all of a sudden gets an idea, though. He wants to carry all of the ships over a mountain and attack Paris. I don't know if it was from behind, but from an alternate route, something that they would have never seen coming. Everybody's all happy. They're like, Ragnar, how could we ever doubted you? This is the great Ragnar. And they end up working really hard. And I think it seemed like it was a few days it took him to get all the boats over, but Floki ended up being the carpenter that he is, figuring everything out, and they got put to work right away. We're then taken back to Paris, and Rollo is awarded some sort of title for defending the entire kingdom. And on top of that, he is having kids with his wife. Not a ton to note there, but Rollo is still living happy. He actually seems quite unbothered about what took place. We're then brought to, I never remember the girl's name. Weird to pronounce. You know, the girl that sleeps with everybody. The girl that ended up just being revealed to just piss on Ragnar. She ends up trying to kill Eckbert in the middle of the night, but then Judith actually saves the day. She's all broken down. Look what you made me become. Says a little bit about that, but at the end of the day, Eckbert doesn't care. Eckbert's selfish. Eckbert's getting his sex. What's it matter? Like, he's alive. Everything's good on his end, right? But the only other part is we also see someone else die. Yidu. This one was a little difficult to watch, okay? Because Ragnar is experiencing huge withdrawal symptoms from the medicine, right? He knows that she has some on her, but she might not. Like, at the end of the day, she knows that there's very, very little. They end up fighting a little bit, and Yidu ends up threatening to tell everybody about the settlement that Ragnar has held close to his heart and has been suffering with for so long. That's when Ragnar just decides to flat out drown her. And that's where I'm a little bit confused, because we know that how important the secret is to Ragnar. Was that the only reason for doing so? It seemed like he actually cared for her, but was it also just because she was his drug dealer? Like, I don't know Ragnar's true feelings to this woman. Regardless, he ended up drowning her. It was a very brutal, horrible death. And Ragnar was spotted, but nothing ended up coming from it. We then move through a couple more things quickly in the meantime, where Aslog ends up confronting what's wrong with me? Harbard. Excuse me. I was like, what's his name? And that only goes to show how exactly important the story is. And I still don't know if this guy's a god or not, but he's sleeping on with everybody. She confronts him. He gets mad and takes off, and she's broken because she can't cheat on her husband anymore. And I know how horrible of a husband Ragnar was, but you get the point. I just don't care about either of them and their relationships. Lagertha ends up suffering a miscarriage, which was beyond horrible. The seer ended up telling her a long time ago that she was never going to be able to have another child. She thought that she was going to, but of course she didn't end up. That didn't end up being the case for her. On the other hand, Orlandor ended up threatening Torvi's son. Excuse me, Torvi. Yeah, that's what it is. Torvi. I always know by the face. She's a little bit more of an insignificant character as well. But he says, kill Bjorn or I'll kill your son. She ends up protecting him when they're sleeping together. She loves him, and she ends up actually killing her former husband. Ragnar then ends up actually admitting to Bjorn that he had this medicine, and now he just can't live without it. He has one more that he is going to work to use to take on Rollo. The attack takes place. The boats are ready. Everybody's approaching. They do great with the first wave of the warriors from France, but then Rollo ends up getting the upper hand again, and I thought that the Vikings were going to succeed this time. It was a brutal, amazing battle. I loved seeing the Ragnar and Rollo giant battle, the back and forth, the brutality of it. It was extremely well done. Like, all of the battle scenes, guys, in this show are really, really, really well done. I would go as far to say Game of Thrones level. Like, they do a really, really good job with everything they do here, and I love seeing the battle at sea too. And I thought, again, that we were going to get the conclusion of Ragnar versus Rollo. I thought Rollo was going to get taken out by Ragnar, because even at the beginning, like when he was talking to Bjorn, Ragnar, he said that he has to kill Rollo, and it seemed like that was his only motivation. It's brutal, back and forth battle. They're beating each other life and death, and it just gets stopped because while Ragnar ordered Lagertha and Bjorn to retreat, Ragnar was going to stay and fight. Ragnar just clearly does not care about his life anymore. They grab him, get him on the boat, and that is the end of Ragnar and Rollo. I didn't know it was the end of Ragnar and Rollo at the time. We didn't know that if we're watching the show, but that was the end of it. I'm stuck between it being anticlimactic and because the show just took me a completely different route that I'm okay with and I still enjoy it. I just wish that we could have seen like Ragnar actually get his revenge on Rollo, but perhaps they're setting up for Bjorn to do that. I don't know. It's a real toughie. Regardless, we got a sick battle. It was all really, really great, but Ragnar after that, what we didn't know is it's a giant time jump after that. 10 years down the road, Ragnar has disappeared. Rollo is actually trusted in Paris, and everybody loves him. He's still dancing naked, as the seer would have said, right? He is happy. He has his kids. Everything is good. Ragnar disappeared, though. Ragnar's gone. And everybody just went to go live without him. And this is where the story kind of continues, because I don't remember, was it one of the farmers that strolled up? Regardless, the news about the settlement ended up getting revealed to everybody, and they kind of see the toll that it took on Ragnar, but they were also very, very angry at Ragnar for not telling them about the settlement, of course. But I also understand why Ragnar didn't say anything, but I still think it would have been right for him to say something. We also see all of Ragnar's sons ended up being grown up, and man, Bjorn turned into a solid man. Of course, like, all of Ragnar's sons mean a lot to the story, but Ivor is also the one who really, really stands out. So it's Bjorn, Ivor, and you can see the struggle to power is already present a little bit, but it's been 10 years, and if it wasn't 10 years, it was about 10 years. They talk about it being a decade or something like, I don't remember, but it was about 10 years. Ragnar shows up out of nowhere, right? We don't know why. It seemed like a couple times he tried to kill himself, but Bjorn, first of all, something I forgot to mention is Bjorn wanted to sail over to the Mediterranean, but Ragnar decides he wants revenge on Egbert. Ragnar comes back. He challenges his sons because I guess he still is king. He challenged everybody to kill him. His sons hate him. Some of his sons are calling him a coward except Bjorn. And nobody has the balls to actually kill Ragnar. They pretend to, but then they actually don't. After another little bit of more tense scenes, we see Ragnar actually getting to know his sons a little bit. He offers everybody to go sail and have a raid or have an attack with him. But Bjorn actually ends up declining the offer because he actually wants to take his own. He wants to go sail into the Mediterranean. He wants to go find new land. The other thing is we figure out just how messed up Ivor is. Of course, Ivor being the boneless, of course, Ivor not being able to use his legs. He wants to lay with a woman, and we figure out that this dude's a little creep, right? Spying on people, constantly having sex, and then he gets a slave girl to have sex with him. But he tries to kill her because he can't get it up, right? Anger issues. He admits that he actually likes killing people, and then he forces this slave girl to kind of go like, oh my god, he satisfies everybody. He's the best ever at sex. So Ivor, deeply insecure, deeply angry, deeply messed up in the head, and I was like, oh boy, this guy's going to be a little bit of a problem, isn't he? After that, Ragnar ends up visiting both Lagertha and Floki, where he tells them both that he loves them. He apologizes to Lagertha for everything and admits that he actually just wanted to sit back, and he wouldn't have even left the farm with her. I was hoping that they would come back together, which it was a nice closure to the story, and I should have seen Ragnar's death coming, man, because he was kind of saying goodbye to these people. Helga was happy to see him. Like, it was really, really nice. Ragnar ended up just, he ended up like, I know he did stuff wrong, but he ended up just fixing everything with everybody. He ended up being like a nice, wholesome visit. I felt bad for Ragnar. He ended up leaving and tried to hang himself. Didn't work. Wasn't his time to die. The blind man didn't see him today. But after that, he sits back and convinces Ivar to go onto this new raid with him. I guess then Ragnar decided that he actually believed the seer and he actually can't die. I would imagine that's the case because he would have just tried to kill himself another way, but he's like, nope, not my time to die yet. He ends up digging up some treasure and using it to convince people to go sail with him over to England. He takes Ivar, but Aslog ends up seeing a vision of the storm hitting. Doesn't actually see Ivar die, but because he can't swim, obviously, because he's scared of water, that he was going to die. And what actually ended up happening was just that. There was a huge storm. Everything ended up not being okay one little bit. Their boats washed up, and they end up reaching England. But the problem is they have no materials. They have no boats. Everybody's barely alive, and they're just in a tiny, small group right now. And in the meantime, Lagertha also ends up taking back her home from Aslog, which ended up being really, really cool. After a little bit, Lagertha, she admits to her that she can't forgive her for taking Ragnar away, and especially after Ragnar went to go apologize, right? And when Ragnar ended up faking his death back in the other season, she ended up ending that, I've never stopped loving you, right? That was really tough to watch. Like, I felt so bad for Lagertha because she's a victim in a lot of it, but she ended up taking revenge and ended up killing Aslug, but her sons are not there to see. We then take a little bit of a pause though because they're okay. They end up kind of just like needing to figure out what to do, like once they actually get back over to England. But what the problem that Bjorn has is because he goes and visits Rollo, he can't sail to the Mediterranean without crossing the sea. Rollo ends up just flat out imprisoning them, but what we figured out was Rollo just wanted to go on Bjorn's trip with him. He accepts the mission. Everybody still hates Rollo, but Rollo deep down is still a Viking. He has a conversation with his wife, and he talks about how when he hears thunder, he still hears Thor. It's the gods, and he does not fall into the Christian faith just like everybody else and kind of just abandons her. And the only other thing to note about this particular episode is Ragnar and Ivar end up killing everybody when they're asleep. So Ragnar and Ivar are literally the only ones left of the traveling Vikings. I think it was because when the warriors end up finding them, they're all dead. King Egbert, on the other hand, with Aethelwulf is, swear, like, he's probably, like, one of the few smart ones in the show. He keeps saying, like, this is Ragnar. You can't take him lightly. And his people are going to come back for Ragnar if you end up killing them all. Egbert goes, Ragnar's just one man. Everything's okay. Like, and Aethelwulf is really, like, the only one with a head on his shoulders. And he even somehow has a head on his shoulders despite everything that this dude's been through. On the other hand, I don't remember if I mentioned it, but Rollo ended up actually sailing off with Bjorn. He accepted it. Oh, yeah, I did, because he ended up taking off from his wife. Ragnar and Ivar end up killing everybody. We see that Ivar, despite being crippled, he is actually a very, very capable killer, and he admitted to actually like killing, and that's what he ended up admitting with the slave girl. So Ivar's messed up. Bjorn's a W. I was still hoping that Bjorn and Rollo would fight. Never took place, but hey, we'll see what happens. And this is where we kind of lead, like, I want to say towards the climax of the season, but there was a lot of things that took place over here. So Ragnar and Ivar end up being captured. Ragnar kind of has a plan like, Ivar, you just be yourself. Don't be helpful no matter what happens to me. They need to underestimate you. Aethelwulf ends up taking them in. Everybody is pissed off at Ragnar. Everybody wants to kill Ragnar. But Egbert actually comes in and he has a conversation with Ragnar. He promises no harm will come to his son. He's having this weird dinner with Ragnar. And I don't know if the respect came after, if he actually kind of always respected Ragnar. But Ragnar's in a cage, barely eating, barely drinking. He brings the son out. He brings the supposed son of Ragnar Lothbrok out, right? And this is where I felt so bad for the kid. Because this kid walks up to Ragnar. He's all like, I always knew there was something, a fire inside me. I always knew this. I always knew that. And this, it's so cool to actually meet my father. Ragnar goes, it's impossible. I never had sex with your mother. All she did was piss on me. Felt so bad for that kid. Egbert just dismisses him after that. And like, I can't imagine going through life knowing that your father is this like insane warrior. And then all of a sudden, your mother just pissed on me. Like, I was like, oh, the poor kid, man. Why'd you say that, Ragnar? And now here's the other problem, okay? Because they continue their conversation and Egbert actually admits to Ragnar about the settlement and he ordered all of the killing of the people. He expresses regret. But I don't know, like, it really didn't seem like regret, but it also seemed like he was having a pretty nice, honest conversation with Ragnar, and I don't know how to take that, to be honest with you. They end up getting drunk together, having a great time, and Egbert actually frees Ragnar from his cage, and I thought that Ragnar was going to strangle the hell out of that dude, but no, Ragnar just doesn't care about his life anymore. which is so strange because he wanted the revenge taken upon Egbert as well. I don't understand this entire thing. Maybe he was literally just drunk. Maybe he literally just doesn't care about life anymore. Maybe he really just wanted Ivar to be safe. And we know that Egbert is responsible for that. Other than that, they are still drinking. They're having a great time. They talk about Athelstan and what a great man he was, how they both loved him so much, and how he was the most holy man of all time, right? At some point, Ragnar also actually just asks Egbert to kill him, but Egbert says no, and he offers to hand him over to King Egil. Ragnar accepts that, assuming that his son ends up being brought home safely, and when the sons come about, he'll deliver the message to Ivar, and this was kind of like the tactic, so to make sure that Ivar actually ends up coming home safely, which, sorry if you could hear my notifications over there, guys, but he promised to deliver the message that the sons will take revenge on King Egil and not King Egbert. But then when he actually has the conversation with Ivar, he ends up whispering to Ivar, saying, "You do not take your revenge on Egil, Egbert." And Ragnar still scheming. So did Ragnar actually like this dude? I don't know. Like, he had to have not, right? He had to have not. But it really seemed like he did. And then we're brought into the entire episode of Ragnar's torture. They're burning his feet. They're cutting him open. Ragnar somehow does not scream. Ragnar somehow still stays true. He ends up actually telling Egbert too that Athelstan ended up choosing Christ in the end. And I don't know what Ragnar ended up choosing in the end, whether he ended up Christian or whether or not he ended up choosing to like want to go in Valhalla. But after all of the torture in the world, and I was still thinking this entire time, what's going to happen? How is Ragnar going to get out of this? I thought that he was going to get out of it somehow because he's literally the main character of the show, and they're going to kill him at like 3/4 of the way through season 4 with another whole 20 episodes to go. What is this show going to be about? Like, but I actually do like the way that they ended up handling it. And I almost thought that he was going to get out of it too, because when he did see the blind man that actually saw him, it was the guy carrying him over to King Egil, right? But then he actually has this like big epiphany saying like, the seer, I'm not dying today, I'm dying tomorrow. The seer wasn't actually correct, and he actually had to start having a conversation with the seer. He ended up telling him like, you made Lagertha miscarry because she wouldn't have put herself in a battle if she would have known that she was going to have another kid, if she would have known that everything would have been okay. He ends up having like this big grand moment against the seer, and I was like, okay, is this dude going to find a way out? I don't know. Is this a test? Is the seer going to let him out? I don't know, but he unfortunately didn't. He ended up getting tortured more and more and more, dropped into a snake pit. And even then I was thinking like, there's no way that Ragnar actually died, because he's saying, I can't wait to feast in Valhalla. Like, he stayed true to himself, dude. And I thought it was going to be some like Christ-like type thing where Ragnar all of a sudden just rises up from the dead. I didn't know what to expect. I just did not think that he was actually going to die, but he actually did die. We saw the death of Ragnar Lothbrok, and there is still so much more of this show to go. Now, we move forward through the rest of the series a little bit more quickly because Ivar ends up traveling back safe home. Supposedly Odin, and I'm not sure if it actually ended up being Odin, but supposedly Odin started talking about how Ragnar actually did end up diving. Ivar challenges Lagertha to I guess a duel, a combat. So they wanted to kill each other. Lagertha just kind of dismisses him because Lagertha is actually a very capable warrior. Bjorn ends up raiding, and I think they ended up finding, yes, it was people of the Islamic faith. Sorry, I had to look over at my notes for that one because I was like, they moved through this a little bit more quickly, to be honest with you, and there wasn't a ton to really break down from that. Like, yeah, Helga ended up adopting another kid, which was weird. They captured her, and that didn't end up going so well. But the only other thing really is Odin appeared. Odin said that Ragnar died to the sons, and Ivar also promised to kill Lagertha. Lagertha goes to the seer, asks how she will die, and she will ultimately be killed by one of Ragnar's sons. Ragnar's sons still want to kill Lagertha because of what happened to their mother, but Bjorn ends up standing up to his brothers and will protect Lagertha. They're just like this, man. Bjorn's not going to let anything happen to Lagertha, but the seer's been right so far. So I would imagine that eventually Ivar is going to be the one to kill Lagertha, which I'm going to hate because I do not like Ivar, but I like Lagertha. But England does somehow get word, or at least they prepare for the Vikings to attack for the raid of Ragnar's sons to come back. Egbert thinks that everything is going to be okay because of what Ragnar said, but Aethelwulf, the only intelligent one, was sitting back and going like, can you seriously actually believe Ragnar's word? You're going to believe that? You're going to believe that their sons are going to just come for King Egil and nothing else? And then there's a very quick transition of power, right? The army starts kind of getting there and people start dying, but the kingdom is kind of safe. A little bit weird how that all took place, but King Egbert actually renounced his king status, gave it to Aethelwulf, told him to take off, and in the meantime, he actually admitted loving his son. I don't know if he actually ended up loving his son or if he's just saying that so that he can win the battle because he knows that one day they're going to come back and take their power back. So maybe that's what season 5 is going to be about. I'm not entirely sure. There was unfortunately a really, really cool battle where Aethelwulf ends up... Oh, maybe I'm saying this out of order. Sorry if it is, but regardless, Aethelwulf ends up getting attacked by all the Vikings, but he ends up surviving. He ends up taking off, and that's when Egbert tells him to come back, and Egbert's the one who got captured. My apologies. Now they need to sit back and figure out how exactly or what exactly they're going to do with King Egbert, and what Ivar wants to do, which is probably the better thing to do, is to Blood Eagle King Egbert because of everything that's done, right? But Bjorn reminds his brothers that Ragnar had a dream of settlement and agreement, and that's what he wants to do. No matter what, Egbert needs to die, but we need to reach some sort of agreement. The agreement for King Egbert to sign off on giving them actual land for a settlement is to have him choose the way of his own death. Ivar hates this. Bjorn ends up being the one to ultimately make the decision, and Egbert ends up choosing that he just wants to end up killing himself. I don't think that's going to go well at all, because, yeah, you know what? They got papers where they actually own this piece of land. Yeah, so what? You don't think that Aethelwulf's going to come back? You don't think that everybody else in England is going to be welcoming to these Vikings after what happened to their kingdom? Yeah, right. Perhaps that's what season 5 is going to be about. But they truly want peace. Bjorn truly wants peace, but unfortunately, I have to agree with Ivar on this one. Ivar might have had the right idea in taking just revenge because there's going to be no dealing with these people. I don't think that they're just going to live happily ever after. No way. But the papers get signed. Egbert ends up slitting it, which is, why are you going to kill yourself that way? He ends up going in his fancy tub and just cutting his arteries open. Like, why out of everything that you could do? Like, make it quick. Request for a guillotine or something. Like, I don't know. There could have been so much better ways to do it. Like, the pain involved in that must have been astronomical. I mean, like, it was fairly quick, but at the same time, like, come on, man. Why that of all places? Maybe just wanted to die at home. I don't know. Regardless, the adopted daughter also killed Helga, which sucked. Floki was devastated, and Floki was a very loving individual despite like how corrupted he is inside. They end up burying Helga. The brothers are still having confrontations, and Ivar ends up throwing an axe over at Sigurd, which was out of nowhere. I don't know what's going to end up coming from that, to be honest with you, because Ivar just didn't like being called a cripple, and he ended up throwing an axe right at his brother. Ivar still messed up. I don't know what's going to happen to him. I imagine everything's going to be okay, though, because people kill each other over there all the time. Not sure what to think. But then the season actually ends with a new character having sex with, I guess, women that lost their husbands. I would imagine that's the case. So we're setting up for what's probably going to be a new type of villain. I'm not sure, but this season was absolutely phenomenal. This was the best season of Vikings so far. Originally, I didn't like in season 2 and 3 when we actually ended up getting the storyline with France. I didn't care for Judith. I didn't care for King Egbert. I didn't care about Aethelwulf. I didn't care about the sons. I didn't care about the storyline really when it was first developing. But as it's coming to its conclusion, I actually ended up really, really liking the story that was told. I was just so invested in the Vikings and Ragnar, and that's why I'm watching the show for Vikings, right? I'm not watching the show for Paris. But it ended up being really great. The character development was fantastic. I can't believe they actually killed the main character of the show. I'm still kind of like coping and saying like, okay, it's a weird show. It's about gods and everything. Is Ragnar just going to come back Jesus style? I have no idea. Maybe, maybe not. I guess we'll find out. But regardless, I cannot wait to watch season 5. If you're commenting down below, please do not give any spoilers. I am very, very in love with this show and can't wait to see its conclusion, guys. Let me know what you thought about everything down below. Thank you very much for being here and watching. Check out my review for season 1 over here. Unfortunately, no season 2 and 3, but I would love to have you guys over at this video. Thank you for watching. Take care.